If you have ever been ignored, cut off mid-sentence, or felt invisible in a conversation, it is not your words. It is your presence. And manipulators know that. They understand the invisible levers of dominance that operate beneath the surface of polite exchange. Today, you will uncover 5 techniques they deploy to seize control, to silence dissent, and to reshape the narrative without ever raising their voice. This is not about winning an argument, it is about owning the entire interaction. After this, people will not just stop interrupting you. They will start watching what they say around you. They will weigh their words not because you demanded it, but because your presence will subtly enforce a new, unspoken order. This knowledge is not for everyone. It is for the mind that craves control, that despises being outmaneuvered, that refuses to be dismissed. This is the difference between being the sculptor or the clay. If you do not know these truths, they are already being used on you. The average person believes conversation is a shared space, a give and take where ideas flow freely. This belief is a weakness. It leaves you exposed, a target for those who understand the true nature of human interaction. It is a battle for control of the frame. You enter most conversations unarmed, assuming good faith, while others are already deploying subtle psychological weapons. They do not fight for the spotlight, they simply make you feel as though you do not belong in it. They do not shout you down, they subtly erode your confidence until your voice simply fades. You feel the sting of social humiliation, the quiet rage of being unheard, the frustration of having your thoughts dismissed. This is not accidental, this is engineered. And now you will learn to dismantle their silent arsenal, brick by psychological brick. You will learn to wield the unseen advantage. The predator's pace, silence compression. Most people fear silence. They see it as a void, an awkward pause that must be filled. They believe that if they do not speak, they are losing ground or worse, appearing unintelligent. This is a profound misunderstanding. Silence is not an absence, it is a tool. It is a psychological lever that the master manipulator uses to create discomfort, to force the other person to fill the void, and in doing so, to surrender control of the conversation's frame. This is silence compression. It works because the human mind abhors a vacuum, especially a social one. When you extend a pause beyond what is comfortable, the other person's nervous system begins to hum. They feel the pressure, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Their instinct screams, speak, fill this space, make it stop. Imagine a seasoned interrogator. They do not shout, they wait. They ask a question and then they lean back, maintaining eye contact, completely still. The silence stretches. Minutes feel like hours. The subject, desperate to alleviate the tension, begins to talk, to explain, to confess. They fill the space, and in doing so, they reveal themselves. This is not aggression, it is psychological pressure. Your everyday conversations are no different. When someone cuts you off, it is often because they perceive a moment of weakness, an opening they can exploit. They believe you are done, or they simply do not value your input. But when you compress silence, you send a different signal. You communicate that you are not rushed, you are not desperate for their validation, and you are not finished. You are observing, you are waiting. And this stillness, this deliberate refusal to fill the air, shifts the burden of discomfort onto them. To use silence compression, understand its purpose. It is not passive. It is active pressure. End your sentences, especially those delivering a key point or an unexpected insight, with a blank stare and a controlled, unblinking pause. Lower your tone mid-sentence almost to a whisper and then stop, as if you expect them to process the gravity of what you just said. Your gaze holds. Your posture remains relaxed. You give no indication that you are done or that you are inviting their input. You are simply present, allowing the weight of your words and the power of your silence to land. Do not react to their discomfort. Do not rush to fill the gap if they do not. Let the silence stretch. Let them feel the need to speak, to ask, to clarify. This makes people uncertain whether you are done speaking or judging them. They are forced to consider their next move carefully. They fall in line not because you commanded it, but because their own subconscious compelled them to seek resolution to the unspoken tension you created. This is how you seize the frame without a single extra word. Conversation blackmail, the unverifiable reference. Interruptions often stem from a perceived equality or superiority in knowledge. People interject when they believe they can add value, correct you, or simply assert their own intellectual dominance. They hear your words and their mind immediately scans for an opening, a flaw, a chance to prove themselves. Direct confrontation rarely works, it merely escalates the ego battle. The master manipulator does not engage in this petty skirmish. They use a tactic that creates uncertainty, implying a depth of knowledge that discourages any challenge, the unverifiable referent. This is not about lying. It is about strategically implying access to information or experience that the other person cannot possibly verify in the moment. It works by triggering a primal fear, the fear of looking stupid, uninformed, or out of depth. Consider a scenario where you are discussing a strategy. An amateur might list facts. A master, however, might say, as we discovered in the closed-door sessions with the board, the true leverage lies elsewhere. Or, I have seen this exact behavior backfire on people in power before, precisely because they underestimated the hidden variable. Notice the phrasing, closed-door sessions, people in power, hidden variables. These phrases are vague. They offer no specific names, no verifiable details. Yet they imply a world of exclusive knowledge, a realm of experience that the interrupter does not possess. This immediately shifts the dynamic. The interrupter's mind moves from I can add to this or I can correct this to what am I missing? Is there a context here I am not privy to? If I challenge this, will I expose my ignorance? To deploy the unverifiable reference, choose your moment carefully. When you sense an impending interruption or when you want to establish undeniable authority, drop a statement that alludes to a deeper, privileged understanding. Phrases like, in high-stakes negotiations we never speak in absolutes, or my experience with true industry leaders has shown that this approach is often a setup, are potent. You are not making a direct claim about yourself. You are referencing an unidentifiable source or an inaccessible level of experience that elevates your current statement. You are speaking from a height they cannot reach in the moment. The key is to keep it just vague enough to be unchallengeable, yet specific enough to imply significant, exclusive knowledge. Now they are second-guessing themselves, afraid to look stupid or worse, afraid to challenge someone who seems to operate on a different plane. The interruption dies on their tongue, replaced by a quiet calculation. You have leveraged their fear of inadequacy, not their respect. And that is far more powerful. Scarcity framing, the you've got 30 seconds frame. In a world drowning in noise, attention is the ultimate currency. Most people give their words away freely, expecting others to value them simply because they are spoken. This is a critical error. When your words are abundant, always available, always offered, their perceived value plummet. People interrupt because they believe there is always more where that came from. They do not listen with focus because they are not compelled to. The master manipulator understands the psychology of supply and demand. They understand that what is scarce is valuable. They do not just speak, they frame their words as a limited resource, thereby forcing immediate, undivided attention. This is scarcity framing. It works by imposing an artificial urgency, a psychological time limit that compels the listener to become a listener, not an interrupter. Consider a rare artifact in a museum. You do not just glance at it, you study it knowing its display is temporary, its presence unique. Or a limited edition product, it flies off the shelves because its availability is constrained. The same principle applies to your words. When you present your insights as a finite commodity, you automatically elevate their perceived worth. The interrupter's mind shifts from casual listening to urgent absorption. They realize that if they miss this, if they do not pay full attention, they might not get another chance. You are not merely speaking, you are granting access to something valuable and fleeting. To employ scarcity framing, you verbally impose a time limit or exclusivity on your responses. You might begin a critical point by saying, if you want me to be honest, I have only got 30 seconds to say this. Or, I do not usually explain this to people, but here is the short version. These phrases are not pleas, they are declarations. They are signals that what follows is important, concise, and not to be taken for granted. The tone remains calm, confident, and direct. You are not asking for attention. You are demanding it by framing your words as a precious, limited resource. This immediately raises the value of your words in their mind. They become active listeners, not casual observers. They stop formulating their own next statement and instead focus entirely on capturing yours. Interruption becomes unthinkable, as it would mean actively choosing to cut off a valuable, scarce resource. You do not just gain their ear, you command their entire mental bandwidth. Psychological elevation, the third-person disqualification. Direct criticism or confrontation often triggers defensiveness. When you tell someone directly that their behavior is unwelcome or inappropriate, their ego retaliates. They will argue, justify, or deflect rather than comply. The master manipulator knows that. They do not confront, they elevate. They speak about their ideas or advice in third person or indirect terms, as if they are above the conversation, detached, merely observing universal principle. This is the third person disqualification. It subtly defines a higher standard of behavior or understanding and positions anyone failing to meet it as uninitiated or operating on a lower level. It works by leveraging social comparison and the innate human desire to belong to an in-group, to be perceived as competent and aware. Imagine a subtle critique from a true authority. They do not say, "You are interrupting too much." They might say, "People who operate at a certain level just do not interrupt. It is interesting to watch who still does." This is not a direct attack. It is an observation framed as a universal truth, a rule of a higher game. Your interruption is not a personal offense. It is evidence that you are not playing at that level. Or that is something people usually figure out once they have been burned. Again, no direct accusation. Just an implied consequence of a certain behavior, subtly suggesting that the listener is on a path to a painful learning experience, or that they are currently exhibiting a lack of sophistication. This is not about your specific action. It is about your alignment with a perceived higher standard. To apply the third-person disqualification, never make it about the individual. Make it about a general observation, a principle, a higher tier of operation. Use phrases that refer to people, those who understand, individuals at a certain stage, or "it is interesting how some minds still operate." Deliver these lines with a calm, almost analytical tone, as if you are stating a simple, undeniable fact, not delivering a judgment. It elevates you as the detached observer who understands the rules of the higher game. Simultaneously, it subtly warns the other person, stay in line or be outed as uninitiated, unevolved, or simply not sophisticated enough to grasp the unspoken rules of power. This tactic does not just stop interruptions, it instills a quiet caution. They begin to police themselves, subconsciously aspiring to the standard you have implicitly set. They do not want to be the one who still does or the one who has not figured it out yet. You have defined the playing field, and they are now desperate to prove they belong on it. Vocal anchoring ritual, trigger phrase loop. Interruptions are often subconscious habits. People do not always intend to disrespect you. They simply fall into patterns of speaking over others, driven by a need to be heard, to assert, or to simply fill perceived silences. Directly asking someone to stop often feels confrontational and can backfire, leading to arguments or resentment. The master manipulator does not rely on emotional appeals or direct commands. They use psychological conditioning, leveraging the power of repetition and consistent, unemotional feedback. This is the trigger phrase loop. You choose a very specific phrase and repeat it, always with the exact same tone and cadence, every single time someone attempts to cut you off. This phrase becomes a verbal anchor that subconsciously trains them to shut up. Consider how animals are trained. A consistent, neutral cue followed by a clear consequence. The power does not lie in the force of the cue, but in its unwavering consistency. In human interaction, this translates to Pavlovian conditioning applied to conversational flow. Most people react to interruption with frustration, by raising their voice or by repeating themselves. These reactions are emotional and often reinforce the interrupter's behavior, teaching them that their aggressive communication gets a response. The trigger phrase loop breaks this cycle. It is a non-emotional boundary, a clean, consistent signal that their interruption has been registered and is not accepted. It is a quiet, firm reset button for the conversation. To implement the trigger phrase loop, select a short, neutral, and easily repeatable phrase. Examples include, "Wait, let me finish, not yet," or "that is later." The crucial element is the delivery. It must be flat, unemotional, firm, and consistent every single time. Your tone does not vary. Your volume does not rise. Your body language remains neutral and unprovoked. The moment they interject, you immediately, calmly, and firmly deliver your chosen trigger phrase. You do not explain. You do not argue. You do not express annoyance. You simply state the phrase, then continue your original thought from where you left off, as if their interruption was a momentary, irrelevant blip. You do not acknowledge their attempted interjection beyond your phrase. This creates a powerful psychological conditioning loop. They subconsciously associate interruption with that specific non-emotional discomfort of being reset, corrected, and implicitly dismissed. Their brain begins to predict the unpleasant ping of your trigger phrase every time they consider interrupting. Over time, this trains their subconscious to associate the act of interruption with an unpleasant internal experience, a subtle and consistent correction. They do not consciously understand why, but they will find themselves hesitating, biting their tongue, and waiting for you to finish. You have installed a behavior modification program directly into their subconscious, without a single argument or emotional outburst. Their interruptions disappear not because you fought them, but because you conditioned them. These are not tactics for everyone. Most people want to be liked. They crave validation, social acceptance, and the comfort of predictable exchanges. But you are not here for that. You are here to own the room quietly, to command attention without demanding it, to control the frame without ever revealing your hand. These 5 tactics do not just stop interruptions. They turn conversations into subtle games of obedience where you dictate the rules and others, often unconsciously, comply. You have learned to wield silence as a weapon, to leverage implied knowledge as a shield, to frame your words as a priceless commodity, to elevate your presence above the fray, and to condition their behavior with quiet precision. This is how the strategist operates. This is how the quiet mind dominates. This is how you move from being a participant in their game to becoming the architect of your own. Use them. Test them. Watch the shift in people's eyes the moment they realize you are not playing by the usual social rules. Watch as their confidence wavers, as their interruptions die, as their subconscious begins to bend to your unseen will. This is the truth of influence, not persuasion but command. Not manipulation but strategic engineering of the human mind. The world is a stage. You are no longer merely an actor. You are the director, the quiet force that shapes every scene, every line, every pause. Do not just watch the world, control it. Your presence, once invisible, now defines the